and welcome to episode 14 of the Site Podcast, where we chat all things construction and technology. My name's Carlos, and I spend most of my days talking to construction teams about how they deliver projects.
And I'm Jason, and I build software that construction teams use to deliver their projects. How are you today, Carlos?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks. Pretty good. Yeah, it's nice to do an intro that we're not re-recording that time. How are you doing?
You're supposed to not let people peek behind the curtain. I'm excited about a guest today, and then I think you're off to Germany next week. Is that right?
Yeah, part Germany. So we're flying into Copenhagen, but we're going to the Fehmarnbelt tunnel project. So we get to see the Copenhagen side, or I should say the Danish side in Fehmarn, and then zipping around to see the German side too. So doing a nice little side tour and taking the Rob over from the design team. So yeah, it should be good.
Site tours in Europe and the UK are definitely nicer than those down here.
Yeah. Australia's just lots of nothing between each thing, right? And then like heavy construction projects.
Not again. That's your other podcast where you just smash Australia.
Yeah, yeah, the alter ego. Right. So today we have a guest, senior project manager, worked for Laing, currently working on the HS2 Interchange Station. Previous projects include Battersea Power Station on the Northern Line extension and Tottenham Court Road on Crossrail. He's got way more experience than Jason and I combined. So welcome to the pod, Calvin Palace. How are you doing?
Good morning, gents. I wouldn't say about that experience thing too loud. It's amazing what you can get away with when you blag it for so long.
Nice. So I'm quite excited today because most podcast guests, if you listen to other construction podcasts, they're all very, very senior, professional, ivory tower type individuals rather than real project managers delivering real projects. They're not very close to the detail. You are. So yeah, I'm excited for this one. So I'm going to get stuck straight into the weeds. You're obviously in the design and planning phase of Interchange Station. Can you tell us a bit about the scope?
So at the moment, it's early days for HS2. We're looking to see how affordable and how capable the current design is, and it's making sure that we can provide HS2 and the DFT the design that Birmingham Interchange requires. It's interesting. It's challenging, especially with some of the constraints that we have at the moment with rising costs and bits and pieces. And it is difficult, but it is a really satisfying job to be on.
Good stuff. And in terms of the station itself, it obviously sits outside of Curzon Street in the central Birmingham station. What does the overall scope kind of look like if you were to summarize?
It's the only new station for HS2. It's the link that feeds the airport, and one of the main reasons to actually facilitate the high speed rail into Birmingham, to get people to the airport. And it's a very similar concept to I think to Ebbsfleet.
For the high speed one.
That's it. Yeah, it's a very, very similar concept. It's a midpoint transit area, but because of all of the regeneration that's going around in the area as well, it will actually become a focal point. And once the actual triangle space is regenerated around it and built upon, and they've got some fantastic plans for it, then it'll become its own hub within a small suburb again.
Yeah. Okay. And so that's going to be I guess a hub similar to kind of Old Oak Common with London. I guess it's kind of the outer city hub for that particular station. Is that actually where the line splits? So you sort of head north and then you split to either Birmingham Airport or the city, or is it all the same sort of line but an outside sort of station?
No, so it's the same line through, but there is a transport link that goes from Interchange to the NEC and then over to Birmingham Airport. So it's a high-speed transit link, very similar to DLR. It's non-manned.
Okay, awesome. So obviously your background, I mentioned Crossrail, Northern Line extension, and now obviously moving on to HS2. What would you say as a senior project manager on those jobs? What were the biggest learnings that you would take to HS2 from those projects?
Look at the detail. Understand the end game. Because if you don't know where you want to get to, you tend to lose your path as you get there. And if you've got clients or end users who are unsure of what they require, then you've got to guide them. You've got to help them to understand what they want to get out of the project, because it could change over time. These things often do.
Absolutely. So I guess you're like the middleman between all of the detail and then bigger picture, because you're constantly you have sight of full program, end result, design and everything, but you're trying to herd. I don't want to refer to engineers as cattle, but the cattle beneath. You're trying to, I guess, rally to that endpoint.
It is that, but the understanding is that as a project manager or senior project manager or whatever, within the office environment, I'm purely a facilitator. I don't do anything else. I just sit there all day. But my job is to facilitate the guys on the ground or the teams on the ground getting to where they need to get to, because they're the ones that develop and build, and people build things. Processes are there to help, and the data will always be there, and that's how we manage that data. But my job is purely facilitator.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess touching on that, and agnostic of any tools, just sort of process, how do you run planning on your project? Or typically?
It's a difficult one because we need to change. You've known me for a while. I'm a pure advocate of last man planning, and I think it's the right way to go, because I want people to have ownership. And if they have ownership and they've bought into the task and they've bought into the detail, then they will deliver. And if they don't deliver, then they'll own it, and you can move past that. The thing that scares people generally is the unknowns, and that's what gets people's blood pressure up. If they don't know what's going on, then that's what gets them. I'm a real advocate of the planners setting the milestones and then monitoring, but not necessarily setting the full plan, because I don't think they know. No disrespect to any of the planners, because I've known some great planners, but they don't necessarily know the full detail, and they can't be out there 24/7 because they don't know what's going on all the time, which is why it really has to be the boots on the ground, the supervisors, the engineers, the package managers that own the plan, and then they feed into the milestones. That's the only way it works for me.
Yeah, if you look at the size of these schedules, it's impossible for a planner to know the detail of everything, right? So getting the guys
That's right.
at the cold face who are closest to the works to own those tasks, it does make a lot of sense. I feel like Jason's itching to say something. Jason, do you want to jump in?
No, we have a rule, Calvin, where we don't try and talk over each other, because I've been accused of talking over Carlos in the past. But Calvin, it's lovely to meet you, mate. You said something before which almost I jumped in on, which is about keeping sight of the end game. If you're talking about the lessons to take from previous projects, and that immediately got me thinking about some previous projects I've worked on, like big jobs, like a Crossrail, right, where there's an outcome to be delivered, but the project is so long, the amount of people that end up working on that project as it gets bigger and bigger, grows and grows and grows. And the amount of complexity and detail that gets thrown up as you're trying to bring together, architectural requirements, finishes, M&E, everything. That end game can definitely get lost sight of, and suddenly the whole thing becomes about some side track, side quest that we're working on. How can you, with a project with so many people and that lasts such a long time, how can you keep sight of that? How can a project keep sight of that end goal?
It's fairly basic in reality, and it sounds really, really wrong of me to say that. Is you have your key milestones, and they are your stepping stone to get to where you need to be. And depending on the size and however complex things get, then you have to trust people. you have to give people the milestones and trusting them to deliver. And they will generally, 9 times out of 10, they will do that. It's not in our nature for most people not to want to deliver. We're in the game, especially construction is, and for engineers, they want to solve problems. They want to do things correctly. They want to make sure that they get to the end goal. And as long as you're quite specific with the steps that you want to get to, and you articulate how, why, when, so that they can understand what they're feeding into and they buy into the logic, then it makes it so much easier.
And what about in like you're obviously in a design phase at the moment, and in my head it was kind of that design and design development where that end game or the end goal of what is this project delivering can sometimes get a little bit lost, and that's where you're kind of negotiating requirements between a client, the contractors, designers that you might have engaged. That was kind of what I triggered in my mind when you said keeping that end goal in sight. Is that also a challenge on the job, like remembering what the like core thing we're trying to deliver is?
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, when you look at the service provider, the architect, the final client, they all potentially have different drivers. And for me, one of the biggest ones is, bless them, the architects. They have some fantastic vision, and I really don't know where they get it from sometimes. Their vision is fantastic. Buildability of that vision can be a little bit difficult at times. And you as a main contractor, you span that middle ground between the hope and aspirations and the architectural intent, and the actual buildability and affordability. And you not drag that back, but you trying to get some realization into it of what's achievable, especially nowadays when you think of the environment, health and safety, and everything else that we need to do. Then that there is a big ask. But the architects and some of the things they come up with are fantastic.
Yeah, it can be definitely difficult where as the project, I don't know, maybe this is over reflecting on my own experience, but as the project evolves and gets bigger and bigger and time goes by, you can find that those architectural ideas start to creep into requirements, and then the cost creeps up, and having you can't be in every single conversation. Suddenly death by 1,000 cuts, there's all these little details that add 50% to the cost.
And that's it, exactly that. You've got to trust your teams around you, and it's just like I said at the beginning, it's amazing what you can get away with being able to blag it for so long, just having a fantastic team around you. Do you know what I mean? And trusting them explicitly to get the job done.
Yeah, definitely. I think to maybe change tack then, this kind of is an interesting segue, because when I looked at your background, I immediately thought of like some of the greatest engineers and project managers that I've worked with over 10, 15 years or whatever. They've all been, so many of them have been from a military background. And as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about like names and faces of people I've worked with, and obviously your background is from the military, Calvin.
Yeah.
And I guess, do you agree with that statement of like there's like some strong correlation between like really high quality engineers and project managers, and a background in the forces? And what do you think what do you think drives that?
Look, first of all, thanks a lot. I mean, to put me in that position with so like those people you've obviously worked with is a bit of an accolade. Yeah, look, I think I would agree, not necessarily for myself, but I've known some fantastic people that are from the forces background who've moved into construction, and it's one of those key items, I think, that we believe in the team mentality. It tends to be we rather than me, and they tend to have an adaptation of being able to control a room, control an environment, control people, but without controlling them, and treating people for people's sake, but understanding what the end goal is. And I think that's one of the main drivers. And you tend to, most people in the military join at a very early age, their formative years. So it tends to instill in you a set of morals and values that you take forward for the rest of your life, for good or bad. Can be a little bit fiery at times. I can be very blunt at times as well, which the inner chimp in me screams, and it's taken years to get past that. But on the whole, I'd say that the military and the skills that you gain, not only in a professional background, but as a person, it sets you up to be a fantastic component within a business.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think there's like the people I'm thinking of, and there's been quite a number of them, and they're all definitely firm. They're definitely energetic, but you feel like you're part of a team, and you don't feel like you're working for any of them, but you're working with them, and you get kind of that, like kind of what you want from a captain coach of a football team or something like that type of feeling, Calvin, for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's all part of that ethos of you're in it together. It's a shared experience. And look, I've been really, really lucky to have some really good young teams working with me. And I say young, and they have been young. I feel like a right old knacker now. The other side of 50, everything's going downhill, and bits and pieces are dropping off. But the younger teams, they are fantastic, and people coming through now. Do you know what I mean? They really shine, and they make it easy for people like me. They really, really do.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think like something that a lot of folks are definitely passionate about is like this transition from the forces to a civilian or professional role. And obviously, as we spoke about, there's like those folks have a ton to offer. How did you find it? I guess when you made the transition, and probably why how'd you end up in construction?
It was hard. The transition was really, really hard. I think the military's got a lot better now. When I got out in 2000, it was a bit of a difficult time. And a good friend of mine who's a senior PM in Australia got me into construction, small civils construction firm back in the UK there. And it was just from there, and it was literally starting from scratch, out on the tools, supervisor, and just working my way through over the last 20 odd years or so. But yeah, it was difficult. You feel, I mean, I joined the army at 16, and you feel as though you've lost a bit of your family when you get out, because you're isolated, you're all alone. But however many years you've had everything there around you, you've had structure. You've had guidance. You know what your job is. Yeah, you might be working 24 hours a day, but you know what you're doing. And you've always had your mates around you, and whatever that is. And you come out into civilian life, and that's it. You're by yourself, and it is quite traumatic. It's difficult.
Yeah, when I was working, when I first started in as an engineer after I graduated, I worked for a company in Australia, John Holland Group, and we used to have an exchange program with the Royal Engineers, and used to send folks over for 6 months or a year, and every one of the folks that came over were brilliant, that worked on different projects with us, and I think programs like that, they must do a lot to helping that give people certain skills that could make that transition easier.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you say John Holland's, and the guy who got me into construction, actually in Australia, he was working with John. I'm not too sure if he's still there at the moment. I don't want to name drop him on here, but
yeah, no, I'll definitely, I'll definitely ask you who it is after when we finish. But it is a small world, so
it is.
Yeah, I guess the other question I had, Calvin, was if I look, you've obviously worked for a number of big contractors over your career since you started with that smaller one you're talking about.
Only two.
And well, yeah, like Taylor Woodrow, Vinci, and then Laing's.
Yeah, so Taylor Woodrow was bought out by Vinci, the Vinci Grand Project. Yeah. So it's the same company, and then Lang's.
And like Lang worked for the last sort of eight odd years. Is that right?
That's it. Yeah.
Because like, I guess one of the things I was talking to Carlos about recently was at Apex, we've got this, so we get the opportunity to work with contractors across UK, Europe, Australia, New Zealand. And so we've got the pleasure of interacting with teams from all different companies every day. And something just strikes me different about Laing O'Rourke whenever I'm interacting with teams from Laing O'Rourke. I don't know. The way that they deliver projects is like definitely a little bit different, but I think most significantly, I don't think I've ever met like a more consistently engaged group of people. Everyone on a project seems to be really positive about the company. They're like really engaged in their role. And I think the thing that strikes me the most is that they all seem to be like understanding their role in the context of like the broader project and the company. And so I guess inside the tent, would you think it's the same? Like if you compared to say Vinci, is there something different about Laing O'Rourke compared to other contractors?
I think there is, because a lot of it is self-delivery. And the way Laing O'Rourke work is, and it's a strange one. For the 8 years that I've been there, you work hard, you play hard, you have a clear understanding of who you are, where you are, and what you do. The same as your team around you does as well. And it's about people, and you give somebody the opportunity, the guidance, and the advice to do their job, and you trust them to do it. And you're left to you get paid to do a job, do your job, and it's really, really. In fact, I wouldn't say it's fantastic to be valued enough to get on and do the job. You get paid to do it, and I think once you get the same people who have the same similar sort of values together, then the momentum that gives you as a company, as a business, is fantastic.
Can you think of like what might like drive it? Is it like a culture thing? Is it is it something about the company being a private company and having some of those values still?
Yeah,
I imagine it's not by accident, Calvin.
no, it's not. I mean, it is. I'm going to sound like a right company man at the moment, but it is generally driven from the top, and do you know what I mean? And it is. It's being a privately owned company. Then you have certain people that you report to. You have certain details that you need to provide, and it's quite clear. And it's the governance and the guidance is there. And yeah, and I think being privately owned is different. And the drivers are different, and you can change a lot quicker than if you were hamstrung by another sort of organization, because you don't, you know what I mean? You can be driven whichever way you need to be driven quite quickly without worrying about change, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. It does seem unique. Carlos, sorry, back to you, mate.
I was like so intently listening to that I was like, oh shit, I need to think about like what I'm going to ask next. No, one thing that I found really interesting is you've got a lot of focus on like milestones and beating the drum to get everyone to focus on these milestones, and like you're at work with a purpose. And it kind of reminded me of like there were two different types of QSs back when I was a QS. Some would just turn up, they do their job, they work on CEs, they pay their subbies and they leave. And then there's another type of QS that's thinking about like, are we actually making money on this package? What are the upcoming milestones? Are we going to hit them? Damages? And those two different mindsets are like why you need the blunt and fiery that you mentioned. Like sometimes you just need to rattle the room and shake everyone and go, we're actually here to win this job, not just to do our work each day. So, I had to give a shout out to the QSs at some point during this, but yeah, I think it's the same idea that like, I think you need the blunt and fiery, because otherwise people in the room just don't get the importance of what we're actually doing. It's not like you're working in some admin role, you turn up, you do stuff, you go home, and as long as you did it to an extent, it's fine.
No,
yeah. So
and
I
that's
hope you
right.
shout at the QSs too, is what I'm saying.
Look, they've all got their role to play, and they are far better than me understanding the money side of it. In fact, most people are better than me in most things, but that's a different story.
You're underselling yourself, Calvin. Right, we're probably a little bit over time. Oh, sorry, you said something?
No, that's fine. Self-reflection is good.
Yeah, absolutely. Calvin, it's been awesome having you on the pod today. So thank you very much for joining. I really appreciate your time.
No, look,
Calvin.
thank you very much for having me on. Hopefully I haven't bored everybody to death by now.
Absolutely not. And that is all we have time for
Certainly
today.
not.
So thank you very much, everyone for listening today.